At the edge of Oregon's dense pine forest, where the morning fog clings to the trees like a living breath, there stands a quiet refuge called Pine Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary. It isn't a grand place. Just a few small cabins, a row of animal enclosures, and a gravel road that disappears into the mist. But for over 20 years, it has been a place where broken creatures find their way back to life. And among all the stories whispered through those woods, none has ever been as extraordinary as the one that began on a cold October morning. The story of Ashen, the wild lynx, and Pebble, the trembling white kitten who changed everything. Dr. Evelyn Moore had dedicated her life to this sanctuary. 57 years old, hair streaked with silver, face weathered by years of sun and wind. She wasn't just a veterinarian, she was a quiet guardian of the wild. Each day began before sunrise, checking the enclosures, recording notes, treating wounds. The sanctuary wasn't just her job, it was her heartbeat. That morning, as the first light spilled through the trees, Evelyn stopped by the largest enclosure at the far end of the property. Inside was Ashen, a young male lynx rescued from an illegal trap months earlier. When they first brought him in, he was half-starved, one leg torn and infected, eyes blazing with pain and fury. No one thought he'd make it through that first night, but Ashen was a fighter. Under Evelyn's care, he regained his strength, his wound healed, and his spirit, though wild, burned as fiercely as ever. He avoided people, growled when approached, and never once accepted food from a human hand. To Evelyn, that was a good sign. A truly wild animal must never forget the forest, and Ashen was almost ready to go home. 2 more weeks, she'd said, and he would be free again. That evening, as the sky turned amber and the forest grew quiet, a phone rang in the small office at Pine Ridge. Evelyn wasn't there, it was Maya Torres, the sanctuary's youngest caretaker, who answered. The voice on the other end trembled. I found a kitten, a teenage girl said, sobbing. He's so small, he's cold, I think he's dying. The shelter in town said they're full. Can you please help? Maya hesitated. Pine Ridge didn't take domestic animals. Their work was for the wild, but her heart overruled protocol. Bring him in, she said. We'll see what we can do. 15 minutes later, the girl arrived, red eyes, shaking hands, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a towel. Inside, a white kitten, no bigger than her palm, barely breathing. Its fur was matted, its eyes half shut, and every breath came out as a fragile whimper. The girl said she'd found him alone under a porch, shivering. No mother, no siblings, just a little ghost of a creature clinging to life. Evelyn arrived just as Maya was warming the kitten with a heating pad. He's maybe 3 weeks old, she murmured. Hypothermic, dehydrated, severe respiratory infection, she sighed. He should be nursing from his mother right now, poor thing, the girl sniffled. I called him Pebble because he's so small. Pebble, Evelyn repeated softly. All right then, Pebble it is. That night, the sanctuary lights stayed on longer than usual. They fed Pebble every 2 hours, kept him wrapped in warmth, whispered encouragement with each weak breath. No one knew it yet, but that tiny heartbeat would soon shake the very walls of Pine Ridge. The next afternoon, Maya carried Pebble's small incubator down the walkway toward the treatment room. As she passed Ashen's enclosure, something unexpected happened. The lynx, who had always ignored human activity, suddenly rose from his resting spot and came forward slowly, deliberately. His ears twitched. His golden eyes fixed on the kitten. Then he made a sound, a soft, low churring noise, not a growl, not a hiss, but something almost tender. Maya froze. She'd worked with wild cats before. They didn't purr for strangers. Ashen followed her every step, pacing the front of his enclosure, calling out in that deep, resonant rumble. When she moved away with the kitten, his sounds grew louder, urgent, almost distressed. Dr. Moore, Maya called out. You need to see this. Evelyn arrived, skeptical, until she saw it for herself. The lynx was pressed against the fence, eyes wide, body calm but alert, emitting the same soft sound over and over, his gaze never leaving the incubator. This isn't aggression, Evelyn murmured. It's protective. They moved the kitten closer. Ashen immediately settled, resting near the fence, tail flicking gently. Move the kitten away, he cried out, pawing at the mesh. Back again, calm. It made no sense, a predator showing affection toward a prey species, a creature of the wild drawn to a fragile domestic life. That night, Evelyn wrote in her notes, unprecedented behavioral response, not aggression, not hunger. Something else entirely. By midnight, Pebble's condition had worsened. His breathing was shallow, his temperature dropping. Evelyn and Maya worked tirelessly, fluids, oxygen, heat, but the little kitten was fading. In the quiet of the treatment room, Evelyn whispered, he's not going to make it. She hated those words, but she'd seen too many small bodies stop breathing in her lifetime. Then Maya burst through the door. Evelyn, Ashen won't stop calling. He's been crying since you brought Pebble inside. He hasn't eaten. He's pacing like he's lost his mind. Evelyn rubbed her tired eyes. Maya, we don't have time for, but Maya cut in, her voice shaking. What if we let him see Pebble again? Just see him? Maybe it helps both. Evelyn stared at her. The idea was absurd, unscientific, risky. But the kitten was dying anyway. She exhaled. All right, bring the incubator to his enclosure. Keep barriers in place. Stay close. When they placed the incubator beside Ashen's fence, something miraculous happened. The lynx lowered himself to the ground, eyes soft, muscles relaxed. He began to purr, a deep, steady vibration that filled the night air. Inside the incubator, Pebble's chest began to rise more evenly. His trembling eased. His breathing slowed, not from weakness, but from calm. Hours passed. Evelyn stayed awake, watching the monitors. Pebble's temperature climbed back to normal. His oxygen levels steadied. And through it all, Ashen remained there, unmoving, watchful, humming that low, rumbling lullaby through the metal barrier. By dawn, Pebble opened his eyes and mewed weakly. Evelyn smiled for the first time in 2 days. You little fighter, Maya whispered. Maybe he heard that voice calling him back. Over the next weeks, Pebble grew stronger. He started drinking from a syringe, batting playfully at Maya's fingers, exploring his small enclosure. And always, Ashen was there, watching from the other side of the mesh. Whenever Pebble was brought close, the lynx would relax, curl beside the barrier, sometimes reaching a paw toward the kitten. If Pebble mewed, Ashen answered. If someone approached too suddenly, the lynx growled low, not in rage, but warning, as if to say, "Careful, that one's mine." Word spread quickly through Oregon's wildlife community. A lynx and a kitten bonded. Scientists came to observe, journalists called, even skeptics arrived, arms crossed, ready to debunk. But every time they saw Ashen's gaze follow Pebble, something in their eyes softened. One professor said it's displaced nurturing behavior, trauma response. Evelyn nodded politely, but deep down she felt something simpler. Love doesn't always follow logic. Then came the day she had been dreading. Ashen was scheduled for release. His strength, weight, and hunting instincts had fully returned. By every standard of wildlife care, he was ready. The transport crate was prepared, the tranquilizer measured. Maya stood by, silent, Pebble safe in a nearby room. When the dart touched Ashen's side, he growled not in pain but confusion. As the sedative took hold, a distant sound echoed through the sanctuary, Pebble's tiny meow. And in that instant, even half-drugged, Ashen lifted his head, searching, calling back with a sound that tore through everyone's chest. He stumbled toward the noise, pawing at the air, fighting the sedative with desperate strength. Maya's voice broke. He knows, Evelyn froze. Protocol demanded she continue. Wild animals belong in the wild, but her hands wouldn't move. She saw a creature not acting from instinct but from heartbreak. Wait, she said softly, we can't do this. Not yet. That afternoon, Evelyn called Lisa Townsend, a veteran rehabilitator who ran Redwood Haven Sanctuary, a permanent home for animals too bonded, too wounded, or too changed to survive in the wild. Lisa arrived the next day, calm eyes, kind smile, decades of experience in her posture. After observing both animals for an hour, she turned to Evelyn and said, "You're looking at a genuine bond. It's not science, not sentimentality, it's survival of the soul." Evelyn asked quietly, would separation kill him? Lisa nodded. Maybe not his body, but yes, his spirit. The decision wasn't easy. Releasing Ashen meant obeying science. Keeping him meant honoring something deeper, compassion. In the end, Evelyn chose the latter. Ashen and Pebble would be transferred together to Redwood Haven, where they could live side by side, safe and free in their own way. 2 weeks later, beneath a pale Oregon sky, the Pine Ridge team loaded both animals into the truck. Ashen in a spacious crate, Pebble in his carrier beside him. As the engine started, the lynx pressed his nose against the crate's vent, eyes fixed on the kitten. Pebble, in return, stretched his tiny paw toward the bars. No one spoke during the 2-hour drive. Some stories are too sacred for words. At Redwood Haven, the world felt different, vast enclosures surrounded by forest, birds calling above, sunlight scattering through tall pine. Lisa led them to a newly prepared space, a full acre of natural terrain, trees, rocks, and shelters. When the crate opened, Ashen stepped out, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. He sniffed the air, marked a tree, stretched his body under the open sky. Freedom, even if fenced, still felt like home. Then Lisa brought Pebble near, safe in her arms. The lynx turned immediately, walked toward them, and lowered his head. When she set Pebble down, the kitten trotted forward without hesitation. Ashen leaned close, sniffed, and gently licked the kitten's fur. Pebble purred, loudly. then curled himself against the great cat's chest, the way he once did inside his incubator. Ashen settled around him, one massive paw protectively draped over the small white body. Everyone watching went silent. Even Evelyn, the unshakable scientist, had tears running down her face. Lisa whispered, "Sometimes our job isn't to heal wounds, but to honor what healed them." Months passed. Evelyn received a package from Redwood Haven, a letter and a small photo album. Inside were pictures: Ashen lying on a wooden platform, Pebble perched beside him, the two playing with enrichment puzzles, napping under a patch of sunlight. In one photo, Pebble rested atop Ashen's head, the lynx gazing into the distance like a king watching over his realm. Lisa's letter read, "Visitors often fall silent when they see them." Some ask how this could happen, how a wild lynx could love a domestic cat. Scientists have their theories: trauma, imprinting, transference. But when you stand there and you watch Ashen groom Pebble with such care, none of those words seem to matter anymore. What you see, what everyone feels, is love, not the kind we define, but the kind we recognize instantly. Evelyn closed the album and smiled. On her desk sat a small wooden plaque she'd once carved for the sanctuary. "In wildness is the preservation of the world." But now she thought maybe wildness wasn't just about instinct or survival. Maybe it was about heart, because somewhere beneath the pines of Oregon, a lynx and a kitten had proven that love isn't confined by species, reason, or fear. It's the quiet force that bridges worlds. It's what turns survival into life. And as Evelyn looked out her window toward the forest she'd served all her years, she whispered, not to anyone in particular, "Sometimes the wild doesn't just need saving. Sometimes it saves us too."